This is not some loving, inclusive pride, let's all dance and sing about rainbows and free love. No, this was started from pedophiles.
All right, and welcome back to 2023. New patch updates include banning trans kids from participating in sports, genital inspection requests, businesses being allowed to kick you to the curb if they think you're on the rainbow spectrum, and cloning. Very exciting, I know. While there's a clear argument to be made that every Daily Wire show is the exact same, but with different flavors of bigotry, I feel like there's no contest in saying that this is in fact the female Ben Shapiro. What I mean by that is you cannot argue against that. That is literally what this thing is. Brett Cooper hits a lot of the same notes as Ben. Like, hey, if I talk really fast and really believe the lie that I'm selling, I can just disguise my bigotry as facts and logic. It's genius. In the same way that Ben uses black crime statistics to justify why he doesn't like rap, hip-hop, or Black Lives Matter, P-word, Cooper uses the origins of the word cis to justify why she believes that all LGBTQ members are pedophiles and groomers. The classic accusation. I know, we love it, we love hearing it here, and we're gonna hear even more of it today. Sorry. No, don't be fooled by her title. This video isn't about Cooper being genuinely offended that you would dare call her cis, or call them cis, as they're not cis, so if they're not cis, that would mean that. No. This is an excuse to use some evil scientists from decades ago as proof that every single trans person likes kids. In other words, her fans are brain dead.
So basically, any of us who came out of the chute one way and stayed that way, who have not changed our gender, we are all cis, normal people. We can't just be called man, woman, a person. No, we have to separate ourselves and denote that we are not transgender. Because apparently that's such a big thing these days in 2023. And as
it's a big thing because conservatives made it a big thing. They made it a huge thing, actually. They made it a very profitable thing to look at Dylan Mulvaney and say, you're a man, you have a dick and balls, you're a man. Spreading hate for views is actually such a booming business that hosts at the Daily Wire just can't stop doing it. YouTube has this useless feature called the search bar. Instead of using that, pick a YouTube channel and press this little button up here. Search for a word like, I don't know, transgender, and boom, here's everything they've ever uploaded with the word transgender in the title or description. So I think that Brett is angry because she has to specify that she is in fact not trans, and I can't help but think that if people like Brett stopped making hours and hours of content painting trans people as groomers and freaks, you wouldn't have to be so scared of someone thinking you're trans. That's just food for thought, I guess.
And as of very recently, this term has almost become derogatory as it is used by both trans and non-trans people, whether it be them looking down on us cis people, or cis people being taught to hate themselves because they're not transgender, and it's just absolutely ridiculous.
Something I often see from right-wing commentators is this victimhood mentality, this belief that straight people are under attack and religious freedom is being persecuted.
A desperate need for victimization is at the center of all of this. It's at the center of most things right now, but especially this, whether it be them looking down on us cis people.
So like more than 400 bills targeting trans people have been submitted in state legislatures since the start of this year. I think in order to convince people that cis people are under attack, you should probably show that there are bills being passed preventing people from being cis or practicing their religion. This claim becomes even weaker when you remember that Brett Cooper is part of the Daily Wire, the company funding the guy attacking children's hospitals and suicide hotlines because he wants LGBTQ kids to endure further harm. That's just, there's no hiding that anymore. That's just what it is. I don't think it's controversial to say that if you're attacking a suicide hotline meant for LGBTQ kids, you're kind of an asshole. I don't think we should dance around that anymore. So anyways, the person who thinks cis people are being taught to hate themselves for not being trans just so happens to work for the company that actively puts out content shaming people for being part of the LGBTQ or just left-leaning in general. I think a good rule of thumb is if a Daily Wire member is telling you that straight people are under attack, you should definitely check out what they're saying about trans people because it's more than likely way worse.
But I absolutely believed that cisgender was just some sort of like word that a chronically online person made up 5 years ago and we suddenly adopted. No, these were doctors. Creepy ass sexologist doctors. Now,
yeah. It's crazy to think that words in the English vocabulary didn't come from the internet. What a depressing timeline we live in where if we don't know a word, we just kind of assume that it's internet slang. To be fair, I can't really blame her. There are plenty of words in the English language that I don't know. Fun fact, did you know that in Japanese when you want to say cold brew coffee, you say korudo brew kohi? It's crazy how that word didn't come from some chronically online person like 5 years ago, right? The next few minutes from this part of our video is that same old tired bullshit, trying to connect minor attracted people to the LGBTQ, because of course that's her strategy here. There's also a subtle advertisement for Matt Walsh's propaganda film, because of course there is, but we're just gonna skip past all of that because obviously, unless you're going out of your way to spread false information, this is clearly a load of horse shit. So moving on.
Researcher working in the 1950s and 60s considered ahead of his time. I mean, he and CISGENDER are two of the most prominent scientists credited with creating sex and gender and normalizing these terms like cisgender, promoting this ideology. And they are nothing short of pedophiles and child abusers. That is where this ideology stems from. This is not some loving, inclusive pride, let's all dance and sing about rainbows and free love. No, this was started from pedophiles. And we're supposed to just think that it's all fine, that it's totally changed in the last 50 years, that none of this remains? Bullshit. I don't believe it.
Yes, Brett Cooper. These two dudes created sex and gender. I'm imagining like a comedy movie from the early 90s where these two friends go back in time to like invent sex and like explaining to cavemen how to have sex. It's like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, teaching cavemen how to fuck.
I introduce you to the fantastic world of gay sex.
Now, I'm not like a historian. I didn't study sexology in college, but I think most people understand that if the author of a book turns out to be a pedophile, that doesn't mean that everyone who's ever read their books are now suddenly pedophiles. Like, there are a lot of fans of Harry Potter who aren't raging TERFs. This is just another example of a conservative trying their best to equate pedophiles to people who want to have consensual sex with someone of the same gender because what else do they have to do on a Friday night? I hate having to keep refuting this claim. I feel like video after video I have to explain. Not all trans people are pedophiles. Like, that's such a crazy thing, I know. The hard truth of the matter is that people like Brett Cooper and Ben Shapiro are gonna keep parroting this same tired lie. It's a lie that people like Anita Bryant was pushing all the way back in the 1970s, and it's a lie that people are gonna keep saying all the way up until like the 2070s. The best thing people like you and me can do is remind each other how flawed this line of thinking is, in that the majority of the time, the people saying this crap are being paid to say it. Either that or it's a massive self-report. Also, about this clip from her.
This is a prime example of how being an academic or a scientist does not warrant instant merit or credibility. It does not.
Please stop taking medical advice from people who aren't in those fields. I know it's really hard to hear this if you're a dum-dum, but if your doctor is saying stop injecting yourself with horse steroids, please don't listen to what a YouTuber is saying instead of your doctor. I don't know anything about being non-binary. I don't know any about the steps someone might take to go about transitioning. I don't know when or how people realize that they're attracted to people of the same sex, but when you want answers to questions like these, you should probably ask the people who have gone through these things so you can get an answer from someone who's experienced this stuff firsthand, not the guy who hosted a podcast instead of going to college. I'm taking the time to point this sort of thing out because I've spent a lot of time watching Ben Shapiro videos, Matt Walsh videos, Candace Owens videos, and now I'm here watching Brett Cooper, and she's doing the same thing that these other morons do, which is get you to doubt medical professionals. I'm not standing by any of what John Monet or that other scientist guy did. I understand they're awful, terrible people. I'm just reminding you that the Daily Wire has a habit of getting their viewers to doubt what a doctor is saying. Why are they doing that? Well, I'll just leave it up to interpretation for now.
There are so many trans people as well who are standing up against this and saying this is ridiculous. Like, I don't want to push any of this of you. I'm just going to do me, you do you, which is totally fine. Everybody stay in your lane.
I'm gonna do me and you do you. She says right after saying that pride is actually about pedophilia because the guy who coined the word is a pedophile. Everybody stay in your lane except me as I come to your lane to make you stop doing what you're doing. Sure, there are plenty of trans people agreeing with the sentiment that Brett Cooper is sharing here. There are also gay people who are in favor of dehumanizing trans people. Just because we get a woman who agrees that every woman should have less rights than a man, it doesn't mean that she speaks for every woman. The same way that one gay person or even 100 gay people don't speak for every gay person. And the same goes for transsexuals or any member of the LGBTQ or any member of any group. So to tell your audience that there are trans people with your same opinion as if it's proof that cis really is a derogatory term, it's about as meaningful as saying, well, my mom says I'm handsome. And it's also hilarious that the only time that people like Brett Cooper will listen to what these individuals have to say is when they're agreeing with them. As for the trans people who are standing up for people who are offended by the word cis, look dude, they're not going to show you the same level of respect down the line. So I would say just let them mull over it and let it die down until they find something new to bark at, but that's just me. That's just how I see it. Do whatever the fuck you want.
So when people like me talk about pedophilia and grooming and we worry about the next generation and our children, these are valid concerns. Because this history is not far off. This was 50, 60 years ago. And like I said earlier, do you think it's just gone away now? No. CISGENDER, Monet, all of those men, their legacy still stands. And whether people are knowingly or unknowingly, subconsciously or unsubconsciously putting this into the world, it still exists. We have a right to be concerned. We have a right to talk about this. You are not a bigot or a homophobe or a transphobe for literally speaking common sense. So stop feeding into this crap. It is not innocent and it never was.
The issue with people like Brett Cooper, however, aside from everything, is that these fears and worries of grooming and pedophilia are almost never based on anything other than feelings or assumptions. And as her boss would say, facts don't care about your feelings. On the topic of facts, let's take a look at this study conducted by UCLA titled LGBTQ People on the Sex Offender Registries in the US. In this study, people who are required to register on the Sex Offender Registry were asked to answer questions such as their specific crime, how the legal process went, like did they serve any jail time, how much jail time, the impact fact of being on the registry, basically a survey asking, hey, you did a crime, how screwed were you as a result? For these sex offenders, hopefully a lot. In this survey, there were 964 respondents, and from those 964 sex offenders, only 20% identified as a member of the LGBTQ, and only 0.7% of all respondents identified as transgender. 0.7% out of 964. On top of this, the survey also found that members of the LGBTQ are actually far more likely to serve prison time. This means that as a cis male, you could commit an identical crime to a trans person. And even though the crimes are identical, you'll have a far lower chance of serving time in prison than the trans person has for, again, an identical crime. This is all to say that while yes, you do have the right to be concerned for the safety of your children, that's no excuse to accuse an entire group of being pedophiles or groomers when statistically, they're far less likely to actually commit the crimes you're accusing them of. Especially when your main connection between those two things is the usage of a word that was coined by a scientist that some of these people might not even know anything about. Like, let's be honest, the US education system isn't that great. There's probably a lot of people who've never heard of them. Even when she brings up Monet, she's not just stating that the word comes from pedophiles. She's stating that the entirety of the LGBTQ as a whole is rooted in pedophilia and child abuse.
This is not some loving, inclusive pride, let's all dance and sing about rainbows and free love. No, this was started from pedophiles.
When Brent says, stop feeding into this crap, it's not innocent and it never was, she's demanding that you stop treating transsexuals as human beings because none of them are innocent, as she says. I feel that this clashes with her earlier statement that cis people are being taught to hate themselves for not being trans, because now we see that Brett is going out of her way to teach people to hate trans people in turn because this was started from pedophiles. Before we end this video, I want to share with you a clip from another one of Brett's videos. Funny enough, the title of this video is Disney is teaching your kids to be racist, in case you weren't already convinced that Brett Cooper and Ben Shapiro are the same person.
You can be honest about history without slandering an entire race and teaching young children to believe that they are inherently oppressed in 2023, or teaching an entire other race of children that they are inherently bad and villains and should be hated.
While the LGBTQ isn't a race of people, I think the point she's trying to make in that video actually helps me out with my own point here. We can talk about the pedophiles and groomers within the trans community and cast them out as we would with any other sex offender. And we can talk about the heinous crimes of scientists from previous centuries, but we can do so without teaching people that an entire community of people are bad and villains. Now that I've shown you the hypocrisy in the things that Brett says, as well as the numbers that work against her accusations of grooming, I hope you can walk away from this with the knowledge that these claims of wanting to protect children are often used in bad faith. If you want to protect children and give predators what they deserve, you should go about doing so without destroying a pride section in your local Target. Anyways. Special thanks to Disdain for supporting me over on Patreon, as always. My top G, thank you again. If you like what I do and you want to see more from me, consider leaving a like and subscribing for more. Next week, I'll be talking some more about Just Pearly Things and her thoughts on women's suffrage and fat phobia. I know I was supposed to do that this week, but I changed my mind and decided to do this one first. Sorry. If you have a channel you'd like me to review or react to, consider telling me all about them in the comments. And with that being said, thank you for watching. I really appreciate it, and I hope to see you again soon. Okay, bye.